New 72 Radio, the voice, views, and visions of the collective, co-creating, collaborating, and weaving wonders.
Hello, my name is Jeremy R.J. White, and welcome to the Voice of Odin. If you are intrigued by these stories and tales of our ancients, please visit my website, jeremyrjwhite.com, and see how they can change your lives. Thank you. Welcome to the Voice of Odin. So the first story I'm going to read tonight is a different version of the creation story. And the Teutonic stories have a different slant on them and sort of slightly easier to read. So here I go. In the ages when naught else was, there yawned a space, a vast empty gulf called Ginnungagap. Length it had and breadth immeasurable, and there was depth beyond comprehension. No shore was there, no cooling wave, for there yet was no sea, and the earth was not yet made from the heavens above. There in the gulf was the beginning of all things. There time first dawned, and in the perpetual twilight was All-Father, who governs every realm and sways all things, both great and small. First of all there was formed northward of the gulf Niflheim, an immense home of misty darkness and freezing cold, and to the south Muspelheim, the luminous home of warmth and of light. In the midst of Niflheim burst forth the great fountain from whence all waters flow, and to which all waters run, and it is named Felgemir, the roaring cauldron, and from it surged at the beginning 12 tremendous rivers called Elgvagar, that washed southward towards the gulf. A vast distance they traversed from their source, and then the venom that was swept within them began to harden, as does dross pouring from the surface, until they congealed and became ice. Whereupon the rivers grew silent and ceased to move. The gigantic blocks of ice stood still. Vapour arose from the ice venom, and was frozen to rime, layer upon layer heaped up in fantastic forms, one above the other. That part of the gulf which lay northward was the region of horror and of strife. Heavy masses of black vapour enveloped the ice, and within there were screaming whirlwinds that never ceased, and dismal banks of fleeting mist. But southward, Muspelheim glowed with intense radiance, and sprayed forth beauteous flakes and sparks of shining fire. The intervening space between the region of tempest and gloom and the region of warmth and light was the peaceful twilight, serene and still, as is the windless air. Now when the sparks from Muspelheim fell through the frozen vapour, and the heat was sent thither by the might of the All-Father, drops of moisture began to fall from the ice. It was then that their life began to be. The drops then quickened, and a formless mass took human shape. Thus came into being the great lumbering clay giant, who was named Ymir. Rough and ungainly was Ymir, and he stretched himself and began to move about. He tortured by the pangs of immense hunger, so he went forth ravaging the search for food. But there was not yet sustenance of which he could partake. The whirlwinds went past him and over him, and the dark mist enveloped him like a shroud. More drops fell through the gloomy vapours, and next there was formed the gigantic cow, which was named Uldhumla, void darkness. Ymir beheld it standing in the gloom beside the blocks of ice, and groped weakly towards it. Wandering, he found that milk ran from its teats in 4 white streams, and he greedily drank and drank until he was filled with the seeds of life and was satisfied. Then a great heaviness came over Ymir, and he lay down and fell into a deep and dreamless slumber. Warmth and strength possessed him, and sweat gathered in the pit of his left arm, from which, by the might of the All-Fire, were formed the son named Mimir and a daughter named Besla. From Mimir were descended the Vanna gods. Under the feet of the Ymir rose the monstrous 6-headed sun, who was the ancestor of the evil Frosterites, the dreaded Hrimthursa. Then Ymir awoke. For Uldhumla, the great cow, there was no verdure upon which to feed. She stood on the verge of gloom, and found sustenance by licking constantly the huge boulders that were encrusted with salt and rime. For the space of the days she fed in this manner, until the hair of her great head appeared. On the second day the cow returned to the boulder, and there she had ceased to lick. A head of a human semblance was laid there. On the third day a noble form leapt forth. He was endowed with great beauty, and was nimble and powerful. The name he received was Bur, and he was the first of the Aesir gods. There followed in time more beings, noble giants and wicked giants, and gods. Mimir, who is mind and memory, had daughters, and the chief of whom was Urd, goddess of fate, and the queen of life and death. Bur had a son named Bor, who took for his wife Besla, the sister of wise Mimir. 3 sons were born to them, and the first was called Odin, which means spirit. The second was Ve, whose other name is Honir, and the third is Vili, whose other name is Lodir or Loki. Odin became the chief ruler of the Aesir gods, and Honir the chief ruler of the Vans, until Loki, the usurper, became their ruler. Now Ymir and his evil sons were moved with great wrath and enmity against the family of gods, and soon warfare broke out between them. To neither side was there early victory, and the fierce conflicts were waged through the long ages ere yet the earth was formed. But at length the sons of Bor prevailed over the enemies and drove them back. In time there followed great slaughter, which diminished the army of evil giants, until only one alone remained. It was thus that the gods achieved their triumph. Ymir was stricken down, and the victors leapt upon him, and then slit open his bulging veins of his neck. The great deluge of blood gushed forth, and the whole race of giants were drowned, save Bergelmir, the mountain old, who with his wife took refuge in the timbers of the great world mill, and remained there. From these are descended the Jotuns, who forever harboured enmity against the Aesir gods. The great world mill of the gods was under care of Mundlfor, Lodir Loki. 9 giant maids turned it with much violence, and the grinding of the stones made much fearsome clamour that the loudest tempest could not be heard. The great mill is larger than is the whole world, and out of it the mould of the earth was ground. When Ymir was dead, the gods took counsel among themselves and set forth to frame the world. They laid the body of the clay giant on the mill, and the maids ground it. The stones were smeared with blood, and the dark flesh came out as mould. Thus earth was produced, and the gods shaped it to their desire. From Ymir's bones they made the rocks and the mountains. His teeth and jaw were broken asunder. As they went round with the labour of the giants, maids flung the fragments hither and thither. And there are pebbles and boulders, and ice-cold blood of the giant became the waters and the vast engulfing sea. Nor did the giant maids cease their labours when the body of Ymir was completely ground, and the earth was framed and set in order by the gods. The body of the giant after giant was laid upon the mill, which stands beneath the floor of the ocean, and the flesh grist is the sand which is ever washed up around the shores of the world. Where the waters are sucked through the whirling eye of the millstone is the fearsome maelstrom, and the sea ebbs and flows as it is drawn down to Vergelmir, the roaring cauldron. In Niflheim and thrown forth again, the very heavens are made to swing by the great world mill, round Viraldanagi, the world's spike, which is to us now the polar star. Now when the gods had shaped the earth, they set Ymir's skull over it to be the heavens. At each of the 4 corners they put as sentinels the strong dwarfs, Estri, Vestri, Nordri and Sudri. The skull of Ymir rests upon their broad shoulders. As yet the sun knew not her home, nor the moon her power, and the stars had no fixed dwelling place. Now the stars are bright fire sparks, sprayed from Muspelheim over the great gulf, and these the gods fixed in the heavens, to give light to the world and to shine over the sea. To these and to every wandering fireflake they assigned due order and motion, so that each had its set place and time and season. The sun and the moon were also regulated in their courses, for these are the greater fire discs that were sprayed from Muspelheim, and to bear them over the paths of the heavens, the gods caused the elfsmiths, the sons of Ivaldi, and the kinsmen of Sindri, to fashion chariots of fine gold. Mundilflor, who has care of the world mill, aspired to rival Odin. He had two beautiful children. One was called Mani, the moon, and the other was Sol, the sun. The gods were filled with anger because of Mundilflor's presumption, and to punish him they took him from his two children, of whom he was exceedingly boastful, to drive the heavenly chariots and count the years for men. Fair Sol they set to drive the sun chariot. Her steeds are Aardvark, which is early dawn, and Alsvid, which signifies scorching heat. Under their withers were placed skins of ice-chilled air for coolness and refreshment. They enter the eastern heaven at Helligate, through which the souls of dead men pass to the world below. Then the gods set Mani, the handsome youth, to drive the chariot of the moon. With him are two fair children, who he carried away from earth, a boy who is called Yuki, and a girl who is named Bil. They had been sent out in the darkness of night by Vidfina, their father, to draw strong mead from the mountain spring, Biriga, the hidden, which broke forth from the source of Mimir's font, and they filled their pale sager to the brink, so that the precious mead spilled over as they raised it to the pole Simmel. When they began to descend the mountain, Mani seized them and took them away. The spots that are ever seen in the night are the far-faced moon, are Uki, and Bil, the beauteous Bil, do skalds invoke, so that hearing them may sprinkle from the moon the magic song of mead and slip from their gentle lips. In Mani's keeping is a bundle of thorns, from which evildoers among met must needs suffer the punishment of piercing pains. The sun is ever in flight, and so also is the moon. They are pursued by the bloodthirsty enemies who seek to compass their destruction ere they reach the sheltering forest of the Varns, below the western horizon. These are two fierce and gigantic wolves. One is called Skoll, the Hedera, chases the sun, whom one day he will devour. The other is Hati, the hater, who races in front of the bright maiden of heaven in ceaseless pursuit of the moon. Skoll and Hati are giants in wolf guise. They were sent forth by the mother of evil, the dark and fearsome hag, Gulveg Hoder, whose children they are. She dwells in Invad, the black forest of iron trees, on the world's edge, which is in the habitation of the witch family, dreaded by both gods and by men. Of the hag's wolf sons, the most terrible is Hati, who is also called Managam, the moon devourer. He feeds on the blood of dying men. The seers have foretold that when he comes to swallow the moon, the heavens and the earth shall turn red with blood. Then too must the seats of the mighty gods be reddened with gore, and the sunshine of summer made dim, while great storms burst in fury of rage across the world. Again and again at dreaded eclipse would these giant wolves have swallowed now the sun and the moon, had not their evil designs be thwarted by spells which were wrought against them, and the clamour of affrighted men. Now Nat, which is night, is the swarthy daughter of the Vanna giant Narv, the binder, whose other name is Mindir. Dark is her hair like all her race, and her eyes are soft and benevolent. She brings rest to the toiler and refreshment to the weary, and sleep and dreams to us all. To the warrior she gives strength that he may win victories, and care and sorrow she loves to take away. Nat is the beneficiary of Mother of Gods. 3 times was she wed. Her first husband was Nagelfair of the stars. Their son was Ud of bounteous riches. Her second husband was Aner, water, and their daughter Jord, the earth goddess, was Odin's wife and the mother of Thor. Her third husband was Delling, the red elf of dawn, and her son was Daegir, which means daylight. The mother Nat and her son Daegir were given dual chariots to drive across the world, one after the other in the space of 12 hours. Nat is first to set forth. Her steed is called Hrimfaxi, frosted mane. Swiftly it gallops over the heavens, and every morn the sweet foam from its bit falls as dewdrops upon the earth beneath. Daegir's fair steed is called Skinfaxi, shining mane. From its golden neck is red radiance, and beauty upon the heavens and over all the world. Of all courses that are, he is praised amongst the most faring by men. There are 2 seasons, and these are winter and summer. Vindsval, son of gloomy Vasgard, is the ice wind, was father of grim winter, and mild and benevolent Svarsud was the sire of fair summer, who is beloved by all. The wonder of men is whence comes the wind that shakes the ocean with fear, that fans the low spark into bright flame, and that no eye can behold. At the northern summit of heaven there sits an eagle guise, a great giant called Relsvegur, the swallower of dead men's flesh. When his wide pinions are spread for flight, the wings are stirred beneath them and rush down the earth. When coming or going or travelling hither or thither across the heavens, the winds are driven from his wings. As yet there were no men who had their dwelling upon the earth, although the sun and the moon were set on their courses, and the days and seasons were marked out in due order. There came a time, however, when the sons of Bor were walking on the world shore, and they beheld 2 logs of wood. They were grown from Ymir's hair, which sprang up as thick forests, and verdure abundant from the mould of his body, which is the earth. 1 log was from ash tree, and from it the God-shaped man, and the other, which was the alder tree, from this they made fair woman. They had but life like a tree, which grows until the gods gave their mind and will and desire. Then was the man named Ask, and the woman named Embla, and from them are descended the entire human race, whose habitation is called Midgard, the middle ward, the middle earth, and Mannerheim, home of men. Round Midgard is the embracing sea, and beyond on the outward shores is Jotunheim, home of the giants. Against these the gods raised an ice bulwark, shaped from the eyebrows of the turbulent Ymir, whose brains they cast high in the heaven, where they became heavy masses and scattered clouds, tossing hither and thither in the violent winds. Address to Odin. In the beginning, the gods were born. Before the heavens were builded, thou didst slay the giant Ymir, whose abyss brought forth. Thou the brethren fierce, the sons of Bor, and cast trunk to choke the abysmal void. But of flesh and members thou didst build the earth and ocean, and above heaven above them. And from the flaming world where Muspel reigns, thou sent and fetched fire, and madest light. Moons, sun, and stars which thou hast hung in heaven, dividing clear the paths of night and day. And Asgard thou didst build, and Midgard fought. There me thou madest, of the gods were born. Last, walking by the sea, they founded spars of wood, and framed them who still on earth, or the sea and the fields of pirates sail. And all the race of Ymir didst drowned, save one, Bergelmir, who was on shipboard fled. Thy deluge, and from him the giant sprang. But of all that brood thou hast removed far off, and set on ocean's utmost marge to dwell. But Hela into Niflheim thou threwest, and gave her 9 unlightened worlds to rule, a queen and empire over all the dead. And that was just a poem about this for the Middle Ages. Now we're going to talk about the 9 worlds. The Aesir gods built for themselves Asgard, the celestial city, which is set high above the heavens. It stands there in beauty and in glory above a holy island in the midst of dark broad river, flowing from the thunder vapours that rise through the great world tree from Velgamir, the roaring cauldron. The mothers of waters, the river is ever troubled with eddies and fierce currents, and above it hover darkly thick banks of kindling mist called the Black Terror Gleam, from which leap everlasting tongues of vapour flame, lightning, filling the air and darting like white froth from whirling billows. Round Asgard is the dark and lofty wall, and that the great boiling river breaks angrily at its base. There is no entry save by Odin's almighty gate, and if anyone who is unworthy, be he god, giant, or mortal, should cross the river unscathed by the vapour flames, and seek to open the gate of Asgard, he would be caught suddenly by the chain which springs from the lock of strange mechanisms, and crushed and utterly destroyed. In the middle of Asgard was built stately Ivdal, the court of judgment, the high thingstead of the gods, in which their own divine affairs are discussed and arranged. The beauty of the great hall is unequalled in all 9 worlds, for its roof is of shining silver, and it is resplendent without and within, and burnished with graven gold. Therein was set the great golden throne of Odin, the chief ruler of Asgard, and around it were placed 12 golden seats for the gods who sit with him in judgment, and to whom the All-Father gave power to rule and to issue decrees. When Odin sits on his high golden throne, he looks over the homes of giants and elves and mortals and sees all things. He is silent, he is still, and he listens. Another fair and stately structure did the gods cause to be made as a sanctuary for the goddesses and the singers or skalds who echo its praise is called Vingolf, the abode of friends. In Asgard was shaped a smithy, which was furnished with anvils and hammers and tongs. With these the gods had made for them by the cunning elfsmiths, Ivaldi's sons, and Sindri's kinsmen, every instrument that they would need. They worked in fine metals, and so great was the treasure of gold that all movables were made of it. On a green place there is a celestial city, where found the golden tablets with which was played the game of the gods. This was in the Golden Age, which lasted until there came from Jotunheim 3 giant maids, who brought utter corruption. Of the gods in ages past it became known that there dwelt in Midgard a race of dwarves. In the deep, dark mould of Ymir's body they swarmed as do maggots in the rotted flesh, and they went hither and thither with no purpose or knowledge. All the gods assembled in their high thingstead, with Odin seated on the golden throne, and there took counsel one with another. To the dwarfs they gave human shape, but their hue was of the blackness of the earth, in which they had being. Over them the gods set Modsognir, who is Mimir, to be king. In the mounds of the earth dwell one tribe of these dark black elves, within rocks another, and a third have their habitation inside the precipitous mountains. Besides these are the trolls, who fly hither and thither carrying bundles of sticks, and have power to change their shape. Now the wonder of the universe, which was set in order by the will of the All-Father, is the great ash tree, Yggdrasil, the tree of existence, which nourishes and sustains all the spiritual and physical life. Its roots are spread through the divisions of the worlds that fill the yawning gulf, and its boughs are above the high celestial city of the gods. It grows out of the past, it lives in the present, and it reaches always towards the future. The world ash has 3 great roots. In the realms below Midgard is one root, which receives warmth and life in Hela's glittering plains from the deep fountain of Erd, the goddess of fate and the goddess of death. Another root reaches the egg-white well of Mimir, who is wisdom and memory, and the last root is in gloomy Niflheim, where it finds hardening sustenance in Vergelmir, the roaring cauldron, the font of all primeval waters, ice cold and everlasting, which springs up on Hagelmir mountain. In the realm of Erd, which is Hela, the souls of good men be. Nigh to it, it is the underworld, is Mimir's own Mimir's grove, where dwells the race which will regenerate the world of men. Below cold and darksome Niflheim are the 9 divisions of torture in which the souls of the wicked are punished. At Vergelmir, the watchman of the root of Yggdrasil is Ivaldi, who with his sons contended against the storm giants to threaten Hela. The roots of the great world tree suck up the waters of the 3 eternal fountains, and these mix together great imperishable life. In the well of wise Mimir the fibres are made, white with the holy mead which gives wisdom to men, the poetry also, and the very elixir of eternal life. On the high branches of Yggdrasil, which overshadow Asgard, sits a wise eagle, and between his eyes is perched a hawk named Vedfolnir, and on the topmost bough is Goldcomb, the cock of the north, which awakens the gods from sleep and puts the demons to flight. From Hela answered the red cock, whose fire purifies what is good and destroys what is evil. But the great well tree bears a more painful burden than mortals can conceive. In the well of Vergamir, in the black realm of Niflheim, is the cork-eating dragon Nidhogg, the lower one, which chews constantly at the root, above 4 giant hearts ever biting at the buds of its leaves on its side. Age rots it, and many serpents gnaw its tender fibres in the dark underworld, for there never was good to which evil came, nor growth which has not been decayed in the passage of time. The Norns of Hela sprinkle the great ash tree each morning with precious mead from Urd's fountain of life, so that its leaves may ever be green. Thence comes the honeydew, which drips on the world and is stored by the bees. And in Urd's fountain there are 2 mystic swans, which are the ancestors of the swan race in Midgard. Up and down the world tree runs constantly the squirrel, Ratatosk, which bears gossip between the eagle on the highest branches and the dragon Nidhogger chewing at the roots, and is thus ever the cause of strife in the world. Greatly dreaded is Nidhogg, who flies to the rocks and cliffs on the lower world with the bodies of dead men beneath his wings. The 3 fates are called the Norns, are Urd and her 2 sisters, Urd present, Verdandi past, and Skuld the future. By them are spun at will the fates of men and women. There are also Dizir, who are maids of Urd, unto whom various duties are assigned. The Harmingers are those Dizirs who are the guardians of men through their lives, and appear to them in dreams to give warnings and noble counsel. And he whom the holy elf deserts for wrongdoing is indeed lost. The decrees of Urd are executed by the Gyptes. The men who are favoured are suddenly awarded good fortune and treasure. Other Daesir attend upon families and even upon tribes. There are also the sweet elf maids who care for babies and unborn babies in their fair realms of Urd, and find them kindly mothers in the world of men. And there are maids who conduct the souls of the dead to Hela's glittering plain. Now in Hela is the lower world Thingstead of the gods, where the souls of the dead are judged, and rewards and punishments are meted out by Odin. There is but one road thither from Asgard for all gods, save Thor, and that is over the curved bridge Bifrost, the rainbow, which has its foundation beyond the edge of the world of men. The southern span of it reaches the font of Urd in the realms of the green verdure that ever know decay. Bifrost is built of air and water, and is protected by red fire flaming on its edge. Frost giants and mountain giants ever seek to capture the bridge, so that they may ascend to Asgard and overcome their Aesir gods, but its sentinel, Heimdall, is constantly on guard and against them. The gods set Heimdall, son of the waves, to protect the bridge forever against the enemy. He is clad in silvern armour, and on his head it is a burnished helmet with ram's horns. Horsed on his swift steed, Gulltop, he now watches at the highest point of Bifrost, from his fortified citadel, Himinborg, the ward of heaven, where his hall is supplied with precious mead, and none he crosses over from side to side of the bridge. His sight is so keen that he can see by night as well as day the length of 100 leagues, and he listens so keenly that he can hear the grass growing. He sleeps as little and as lightly as a bird. When the giants and monsters come to assail the gods at Ragnarok, Heimdall shall blow the thunder blast on the Gullahorn, which is hidden in the deepest shade of the world tree. With his great sword he shall combat with the evil one in the last battle. Heimdall is loved by both the gods and by men, and he is called Gullantani because his teeth are made of gold. There was a time when he went unto Midgard as a child. He grew up to be a teacher among men, and he was named Skif. Every day the horses of the gods thunder over Bifrost as they descend to and return from the lower world Thingstead. Thor, the thunderer god, cannot travel thus because the fire of the thunder chariot might set the bridge aflame and destroy it. He must needs wade across the 4 great girding rivers in the underworld to reach Hela's glittering plains. When the gods come unto Hela, they leap from their horses, and they take their seats in the Thingstead. The dead are then brought before them. A weary way, and along these dead men and women have travelled. Down the valley of thorns they came, and those who were given hell shoes in their graves, because they had shown mercy to others when they lived, suffered indeed very little. But the feet of the wicked were torn and bleeding. They had crossed the river full of weapons. The just walked over the boards, but the unjust waded, and surely sorely wounded and covered with scars, so that their bodies dripped with blood. To the Thingstead come men and women in full attire, with the jewels and ornaments which those who loved them placed on their bodies as they were laid in their grave chambers. Warriors carrying their weapons are all clad so they are be recommended to the gods for battle. But silent are the dead, save the happy ones, under whose tongues were placed, or yet another coin for the keeper, and magic runes so they might make answer when accused, and give reasons to justify their deeds. But the Hammingars can also speak to the dead, and those who have not Hammingars to speak for them are known to have done evil and to be deserted by their Daesir in the sorrow and the wrath of the afterworld. Those who are justified pass on to the eternal realms of Hela, where joy prevails, because they have lived upright lives and have been honourable and full of pity, and helped others because they were brave and feared not to die, and also because they worshipped the gods and gave offerings in the right way, and they prayed at the temples. But those who are condemned are sent to Niflheim, the region of torture. They are judged to be unworthy if they are injured others by falsehoods or wicked deeds. If they were adulterers, murderers, despoilers of graves, or cowards, or traitors, profaners of the temples. Those who are not to share eternal joy are given drink from the horn of Erd, which imparts to them enduring strength. In it are mixed the three meads from the wells which sustain Yggdrasil. But the doomed are given a draught of burning venom, from which changes them to monsters. Their tongues are then ever bereft of speech, and they can only but moan. The happy dead disport themselves on the green plains of Hela, where they meet lost friends and ancestors from the earliest years of the world. And many beauteous ways they travel, and wondrous tales they hear. Their children are cared for in the realm of Mimir, memory, where joy is theirs forever, and food is the honeydew. The doomed are fettered and driven towards Niflheim by black elves who carry thorny rods, with which they lash those who falter or seek to turn back. Their first punishment is received when they must needs pass through the regions of eternal bliss, and behold the grief unattainable and the joy of those blessed. Then they cross the rivers which girdle Hela, and climb towards the dark mountains of Niflhel. The wolf dog barks at them in the shadowy valley where it guards the borders of Hela, and there is blood on its breast. And as they climb the tortuous paths and tread the narrow path on the edge of dizzy precipice, they hear the barking of the terrible watchdogs at Niflheim's gates. The dreaded dragon Nidhogg hovers above them, and ferocious birds of prey sit on rocks. Then they enter on Nar gates, to die the second death, to die once more. Punishment given in the 9 realms of torture according to the sins were committed. Some are seized by the dragon, and some are seized by the birds of prey, according to their deserts. Others are tempted forever by illusions of sinful things they sought in life, and there are those who are torn to pieces by the great wolf. In the Venindale is the river called Slid, and it is full of daggers and sharp spears. Through it must wage the perjurers and murderers and adulterers, who are continually suffering new and fierce wounds. Others sit together on benches of iron while venom drips on them. Within a hall which is full of stench unbearable, traitors are hung on trees, and cowards are drowned in pools of foulness. Eternal night broods over them all. Naglfar, the ship of death, lies in the gulf of black grief, in the outer regions of Niflhel, made fast to the dark island with chains that shall ever sever it to Ragnarok, the dusk of the gods. It is constructed of the parings of dead men's nails, the wicked men hated by their kind because of their evil deeds, whose bodies are cleansed not at life's end, and whose nails were not pared when they were played in their grave chambers. When Niflheim breaks loose, the avenging hosts shall sail in it to battle against the gods. The warriors who are slain in battle, or drowned at sea, or borne to Valhalla in Asgard by the maids of Erd, who are called Valkyrie. They are horsed on swift steeds. The first they pass to Hela, where the gods give judgment, and reject the unworthy. Then they are carried by the Valkyries over Bifrost, and the hooves of their steeds resound in Asgard. And in great Valhalla the heroes feast with Odin in eternal triumph and happiness. Now these are the divisions of the universe. In the midst is the earth Midgard, which is encircled by the ocean. On high and above all else is Adgard, and below is the realm of white elves, who flit between the branches of the great world tree. Then Vanaheim, the home of the Vanagods, is in the air and the sea, and in the depths of the western sea is the hall of Aegir, god of the ocean. Alfheim, the home of the elves, is to the east, in the lower world below Niflheim, and is Niflhel, regions of torture. And under Midgard there is Hela realms of Mimir and of Erd. Far below the path of the gods towards Hela fields of bliss are Suto's deep dales on the borders of Muspelheim, where the great giant Sutor, the swarthy sentinel, keeps watch with his flaming sword. Jotunheim is to the north and to the east, beyond the world's edge. Billing is the elf guardian of the western gate of heaven. And when the cars of day and night and the sun and the moon enter the forest of the Vans, the protectors, they pass through the lower world realms of Mimir and Ur towards the gates of Delling. The elf of dawn is in the east. When Nat reaches Hela, there must rest. Darkness falls upon the good earth and is blessed by given sleep. And light comes again at Daygir, as Nat covers the earth above the shadows and the deep slumber. So that's a different version of the beginning of the Nine Worlds. And you'll see the difference compared with the Poetic Eddas, where in this version, which is the Teutonic version, Niflheim is the darkest place. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, Niflheim is the dark place, and then Muspelheim seems to be a place of light and glory. By the time it gets to the Poetic Eddas, that sort of changed to an equal balance, where Muspelheim becomes the place of volcanoes, lava, fire and destruction, and Niflheim becomes the places of mists and memory. But there is still that thing where the wicked men go past Helheim. In the meadows of Helheim are where all dead go to be judged, and they go to the worlds that they're assigned. But the evil go through the gates of Helheim and on to be devoured in Niflheim, or to be cremated in Muspelheim. So it's not a good. So they're telling you to live a noble life. If you live a noble life, you go. They used a different word here. Folkvang is in the Poetic Edda, is the place of the ancestors, brothers, sisters, little children, and partying, and it's a place of plenty and happiness. Valhalla is just a place where the brave warriors go and they fight all day and feast all night and do the same every single day. That can get a bit boring. So I just give that a different version of it to show you the comparables. Now I'm going to go back now and I'm going to read the next section of the Sigurd story, which is...
Sure. Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, sure you can, Kelly.
Which book are you reading from? I know the Poetic Edda.
Yeah, the Poetic Edda is the other version of this. Is Teutonics, Myths and Legends, and a lot of these stories are set older. So these stories started in the borders of the Rhine and the North Country and ended up in Scandinavia and Iceland. And you do have to, even this, you can see that these were translated by Christian monks. There's some of the things they're bringing in the Christian stories with it. So
I thought that was the book. I wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't. So now I'm going to go and read the Poetic Eddas. And I'm going to read the second section. And this is a fragment of the poem about Sigurd. Sigurd is actually our St. George. And in England, he's the patron saint of England. He is the world slayer. And it was changed in about the 12th century to being St. George, somebody from somewhere in the Middle East. But the story of slaying the dragon comes from Fafnir in the Norse stories. Then they changed it to correspond with the Crusades. And the serpent was the evil Saracen. And in some ways, the evil serpent was the druid as well. Anyone who was pagan was an evil serpent, to cast out the serpent from Eden, and we're all pure. So, but they did, as we say in England, nick the story of Sigurd, who was our hero. So this is a part from the Codex Regius. Picks up on the story of Sigurd, some verses into the poem. The narrating is the aftermath of Brunhild's dream of Sigurd to be killed. In this poem, Sigurd is murdered outside in the forest by Guthrum, younger brother of Gudrun, aided by Gunnar and Hogni, and the focus is of Brunhild's reaction to the death. The speaker of the first stanza seems to be Hogni, responding to Gunnar's request for help in disposing of his brother-in-law. Gunnar elaborates the poem in verse 2. What has Sigurd done so wrong that you want to deprive the brave man of his life? To me, Sigurd gave oaths he gave, and all are broken. Thus he deceived me when he should have been completely trustworthy in every oath. Brunhild is stirring you up to cause disaster. She's urging hatred, that wrong to be done. She begrudges Gudrun her good marriage match, and also that she has to take pleasure with you. Some men roasted wolves, some sliced up the serpent. Ravener meat they gave to Guthrum to eat. Before they could design the ruin, they lay their hands on the wise man. Dead is Sigurd on the south side of the Rhine. A raven called out loudly from a tree. Atli will redden his blades with your blood. Your oaths will destroy you, you warlike men. I'll just stop there because this is where it's with the poetic eddas, but these are actually characters in real history. Atli is Attila the Hun, who causes massive destructions right across Europe. And eventually in the story, Gudrun has to marry Attila, and in history, his wife kills him, and it's part of the poetic eddas. So they are stories, but they're based on fact. Outside stood Gudrun, daughter of Guki, and there were the first words that she said. Where is Sigurd, lord of warriors, since my kinsmen now are riding ahead? Hognir alone gave her an answer. Sigurd we've hacked to pieces with his own sword. Still the grey horse droops his head over the prime prince. Then said Brunhild, Budli's daughter, well may you enjoy the weapons and lands. Sigurd alone would have done to control all of you if he had lived a little longer and kept his life. It wouldn't have been fitting that he should have ruled over the inheritance of Guki and all the host of the Goths. When he had fathered 5 sons eager in battle, he might completely rule your people. Then Brunhild laughed. All the hall resounded. Just one time will all her heart. Well may you enjoy the lands and followers. Now you've brought the brave prince to his death. Then said Gudrun, Guki's daughter, many abominable words you've said. May fiends take Gunnar, Sigurd's gravedigger. Though thoughts bent on wickedness shall be revenged. It was late in the evening, much was drunk. There were all sorts of pleasant and unpleasant words were spoken. All went to sleep where they went to their beds. Gunnar stayed awake for a very long time. His foot began to twitch. He muttered many things. The destroyer of armies began to ponder what the 2 men had said up in the tree, the raven and the eagle, as they'd ridden home. Brunhild awakened Budli's daughter, the royal lady, a little before dawn. Urge me on, or hinder me, the harm is now done. Sorrow to be told, or at least let it be. All were silent at these words. Not one could understand the behaviour of the woman. She was now weeping and began to speak and laughing. She asked the men for, I thought Gunnar had a grim dream. It was chilling in the hall, and the bed was cold, and you, Lord, were ripping bereft of happiness. With chains you were fettered among the troop of foes. So from all of you of the Niflung line, your strength will pass away. You are oath breakers all. You clearly did not remember, Gunnar, that you both let the blood run onto the trench. Now you have repaid him badly for that, when he wanted to make himself the most preeminent of men. Then that was proved that the brave men came riding to ask for my hand. Now the destroyer of armies has previously kept his oaths to the young prince. A wound wand braided round with gold. The splendid king lay between us. The edges were forged without fire, and the pattern inside was with poisonous drops. About the death of Sigurd in this poem, the death is related, and here it sounds as if they killed him outside. But some say that he was killed inside, sleeping in his bed. And the Germans say that he was killed in the forest. And the old poem of Gudrun says that Sigurd and the son of Guki were riding to the assembly when he was killed. But they all say that he was treacherously betrayed and attacked when he was lying down and unarmed. So all of these different stories. This one here saying he was killed in the bed. It's a Germanic one where he puts a sword between the two lovers. But most of them, he's unarmed and naked when he's slaughtered, which is the worst way to die. So this goes on to the first poem of Gudrun. Now Gudrun becomes a much bigger character in the story now. There are 3 poems of Gudrun in the Poetic Edda. In this, the first, the Gudrun Kavida, Gudrun cannot and will not display her grief at Sigurd's death. Other women attempt to rouse her to tears by telling her her own sad tales, but it is Gulrund, Gudrun's sister, who has the psychological acumen to display the covered body of Sigurd, bringing Gudrun to give vent to her sorrow. Gudrun's lament is reminiscent in Sigrun's in the second poem of Helgi Hungenbadi. That's a bit of a name to conjure with. Is vividly poignant, so now feels as little as a leaf and calms down the curses of Gunnar and Hogni. Gudrun sat over Sigurd's dead body. She did not weep like other women, and she was to the point of collapsing with grief. Both men and women came to comfort her. It was not easy. People said that Gudrun had eaten some of Fafnir's heart, and so she understood the talk of birds. This is also said of Gudrun. It was long ago that Gudrun intended to die, when she sat sorrowful over Sigurd. She did not weep or strike her hands together or lament like other women. Very wise warriors stepped forward. They tried to ease her fierceness of mind. Even so, Gudrun could not weep. She was so impassioned she might have burst asunder. The gleaming wives of warriors adorned with gold sat by Gudrun. Each of them told of their great grief, the bitterest which had been visited upon them. Then said Galifug, Guki's sister, I know that in the world I am most deprived of joy. The heavy loss of 5 husbands has come upon me, of 3 daughters, 3 sisters, and of 8 brothers, and now I am alone living. Even so, Gudrun could not weep. She was so impassioned at the young man's death, so fierce in mind at the fall of the prince. Then said Herba, queen of the Huns land, I have a heavier harm to speak of. 7 sons in the Southlands, my husband, as the 8th, all fell in slaughter. Father and mother's 4 brothers, the wind played wickedly with them on the waves. The waves surged against the gunwale. I myself had to lay on them. I myself had to bury them. I myself had to handle the journey to Hela. All that I endured in 1/2 year, thus no man could ever give me any joy. Then I was taken captive, war prisoner. That same 1/2 year it befell me. I had to adorn her and tie on the shoes of the war leader's wife every morning. She raged at me in jealousy. She struck me with savage blows. Nowhere have I found a better master. Nowhere have I found a worse mistress. Even so, Gudrun could not weep at this story. She was so impassioned at the dead man's death, and so fierce in mind at the fall of the prince. Then said Gulrund, daughter of Guki, you don't really know, foster mother, though you are wise, how to converse with your young wife. She advised against concealing the prince's corpse. She swept the covering of Sigurd and pushed a cushion by the woman's knees. Look at your beloved, put your mouth to his moustache, as you used to embrace the prince when he was alive. Gudrun looked at him only one time. She saw the prince's hair running with blood. The lord's bright eyes were dim, the prince's breast scored by his sword. Then Gudrun knelt, leaning on the cushion. Her hair came close to her cheeks, grew red, and drops like rain frowned from her face. Then Gudrun wept, the daughter of Guki, so that her tears fell into her hair. And the geese in the meadow cackled in reply, the splendid birds which belonged to the girl. Then said Gudrun, daughter of Guki, yours I know was the greatest love of all the people across the earth. Inside or outside, you were never happy unless, my sister, you were with Sigurd. So was my Sigurd beside the sons of Guki, as if a leek were grown up on the grass, or a bright jewel threaded onto a string, a precious gem among ugly nobles. I seemed also among the princes of warriors to be higher than Odin's lady. I am a little as a leaf among the bay willows now the prince is dead. I miss in his seat, I miss him in my bed. My friend to talk to, my kin of Guki caused this. Kin of Guki caused my sorrow, wrenching weeping for their sister. So your people and land will be laid waste on your account for the oaths you swore, Gunnar. You won't get good of the gold. The rings will be the death of you, for you swore oaths to Sigurd and broke them all. In the meadow there came more merriment before my Sigurd saddled Grammy, and they went off to woo Brynhild. They wretched creature in all fated hour. Then said Brunhild's Budli's daughter, may that creature lack husband and children who brought you Gudrun to weep, and this morning gave the runes of speaking. Then said Gulrun, Gulki's daughter, be silent, you monstrous woman, cease these words. The nemesis of princes you have always been. Every wave of ill fate drives you along, wounding sorrow of 7 kings, the greatest ruination of women loved ones. Then said Brunhild, Budli's daughter, Atli alone caused all evil, born for Budli, brother of mine. When in Hunnish people's hall we saw the fire of the serpent's bed shine on the prince, I have paid for this journey since then, for that sight is always before my eyes. She stood by the pillar, she summoned up all her strength from Brunhild, daughter of Budli. Fire burned from her eyes, she snorted out poison when she looked at the wounds upon Sigurd. Gudrun went away from the wood in the wasteland and went as far as Denmark and stayed there for 7.5 years with Thora, daughter of Hakon. Brunhild did not want to go on living after Sigurd. She had 8 of her slaves killed and 5 serving maids. Then she stabbed herself with a sword, as it is told in the short poem about Sigurd. So I'm going to read the short poem about Sigurd, and I'm going to stop there, and then we're going to discuss what we've talked about. Like Grimnir's prophecy, the short poem about Sigurd is a part and a prospective summary of events following the death of Sigurd, integrating the continuing story of Gudrun and her future husbands, and the fate of Gunnar and his doomed affair with Odrin. The poem also gives a brief story of how Sigurd came to be killed, through the details of how he came to forget his prior betrothal to Brunhild, and how the change of appearance with Gunnar was affected and not spelt out. The centre of the poet's interest is a characterisation of Brunhild, who moves from relentless, monstrous avenger to sorrowing yet unregretful bride in death. The contrast with Gudrun's impotence is the poem is striking. At 71 stanzas, the poem is not especially short. A lost longer poem explaining events between Sigurd parting from Sigdrifta and the brothers' decision to kill have been hypothesized in the Volsunga saga. So 1. Long ago it was that Sigurd visited Guki, the young Volsung had already killed. He took trusty pledges from the 2 brothers, oaths exchanged by men valiant and great deeds. They offered him a girl and a great deal of treasure, young Gudrun, Guki's daughter. They drank and debated many days together, young Sigurd and the sons of Guki, until they went off to woo Brunhild, so that Sigurd rode along with them, and young Volsung knew the way. He would have married her if he could. The man of the south laid a naked sword, a slender inlaid blade between them both, nor did he seek to kiss the woman. The southern king did not take her in his arms. The girl so young he gave to Guki's son. She had not known of any shame in her life, nor of any injury in the course of her days. No disgrace could be imagined. The terrible fates intervened in this. Outside she sat alone in the evening, then quietly openly she began to speak. I shall have Sigurd, or else he'll die. That young man I'll have in my arms. The words I'm speaking now, I'll be sorry for later. Gudrun is his wife, and I am Gunnar's wife, and the hateful Norns decreed this a long tormentor for me. Often she went outside, filled with frozen anger, cold of ice of glaciers every evening, and he and Gudrun went to bed, and Sigurd wrapped her in his bedclothes, and the southern king caressed his wife. I go without both happiness and husband. I'll pleasure myself with my savage thoughts. Then her no malice she began to goad a slaughter. Gunnar, you will altogether lose my land and love, and lose me, if Sigurd is not dead. I shall go back to where I was before, among my close relations and my near-born kin. There I shall sit and sleep away my life, until you manage to kill Sigurd, and become superior to him in all other ways. Let's send the same way as the father. Don't nurture for long the young wolf. Would revengeance come easier for any man later making recompense than to his son if still alive? Gunnar was angry and cast down, wrapped in thought, and he sat all day. He did not know exactly what to do. What would be the most honourable for him to do? or what would be best for him to do. All he knew that he had to get rid of the Volsung, and he knew Sigurd would be the greatest of loss. Different plans he weighed up for hours at a time, and it was customary in those days for women to abandon the royal rank. He had Hogni called to take counsel, for he knew he had trusted friend in all. Brunhild, I like her better than all other women. Budli's girl is a prize amongst ladies. Rather would I lose my life than trade away the girl's treasure. Do you want us both to betray the prince for money? It's good to have hold of a Rhine metal and pleasantly to enjoy wealth, or to sit revelling in our happiness. Hogni replied. He had only one answer. If it's not fitting for us two to do this, then we should not do it. Cutting asunder with a sword the oaths that were sworn and pledges made, we don't know a happier man anywhere on earth. While we four rule the people, the southern leader is alive, nor is a mightier kindred in the world, if we should have a time to bring 5 sons of good family to augment our kin. I know quite well how things stand. Brunhild's passions are far too great. She would have me prepare Guthrum for the killing, our younger brother, not so experienced. He wasn't involved when the oaths were sworn. The oaths were not sworn to him, so he does not have to keep them. It is easy to egg on an undaunted man, and the sword stood in Sigurd's heart. The battle-eager men sought revenge in the bedchamber, and then he hurled at the undaunted one at Guthrum, and the powerful sword Gram, the wonderful bright iron, flew from the king's hand. His enemy parted into 2 pieces, arms and head dispatched in one direction, and the leg half landed backwards. Sleeping was Gudrun in bed, quite carefree next to Sigurd, but she awoke from joy when she found herself swimming in her lover's blood. She clapped together her hands so loudly that the man of mighty spirit heaved upon himself in bed. Do not weep, Gudrun, so fiercely, young bride. Your brothers are still alive. I have an heir too young. He doesn't know how to get away from his enemy's house. They have decided, fateful and sinister, on a new plan, which they are carrying out. No such sister's son, those 7 you should torture, would ride with them afterwards this assembly. I know quite well what all this means. Brunhild alone caused all this evil. The girl loves me above all other men, but to Gunnar I did no harm. I violated neither kinship nor oaths, so I stood not to be called his wife's lover. The woman gave a sigh, and the king gave up his life, and Sigurd left this world. She clapped together her hands so loudly that the goblets in the corners echoed, and the geese in the meadow crackled in reply. Then Brunhild laughed, Budli's daughter, just one time with all her heart, for when her bed she was able to hear the resounding sobs of Guki's daughter. Then said Gunnar, prince of warriors, you're not laughing, woman bent on wickedness, merrily in a bedchamber with any good mind. Why, have you lost all your pallor? Engendered the evil? You must be doomed. More than all woman you deserve that I should strike down Atli before your eyes, so you should see that your brother's bloody wounds, flowing gashes that you have to bind up. No man will taunt me, Gunnar. You struck home all night. Atli won't care about the enmity. Of the 2, he'll breathe no longer. He'll always be the greater in strength. I must tell you, Gunnar, though you know it already, how you quickly fell into guilt. I was not too young nor too constrained at all, with great supplies of gold in my brother's hall. I did slow Gunnar. I did kill Sigurd, and now he has passed from this realm. Okay, I'll stop it here because that's going on. This story is a lot of the Germanic stories, the Wagner plays, you'll see Brunhild, the Viking woman, and it's all about those breaking of oaths. Sigurd was blessed and promised to Brunhild. He said he was going to marry her. Then he was enchanted by witchcraft. And Brunhild was enchanted by witchcraft to marry Gunnar. At the end of this, when Sigurd is finally burnt, Brunhild slits her own throat and throws herself on the fire. But Gudrun goes on to be a very famous character in history. Now, they never sort of tell these stories as if they're based on fact. They just said they're the sagas. But you see lots of time, Attila, the Goths, the Huns are all mentioned in that period just after the Romans. Even the Romans were terrified of Attila the Hun. He was actually educated as a Roman and a very intelligent man, and he had a vast kingdom. It's not sort of mentioned so much, but a lot of our genetic blood comes from the Huns. So those are the two stories I'm going to read tonight. Do you have any questions?
I have a couple.
Okay.
I want to go back before I even go there. I want to talk briefly. You know, even though they're not referenced, they're referenced as stories and not factual necessarily. But when you go back and you look at art history, you
Yeah.
see paintings and drawings of these characters and
Yep.
individuals that date back, you know, thousands upon thousands of years.
Yeah, there's lots of so Sigurd is like the Germanic Achilles. Then you have Achilles from Troy. Then you have Cuchulainn from the Irish story. The stories are all the same. They all die a betrayed death. It's like an archetype, and
Right.
this is an archetypal story, but it's based in historical fact. And what the Romans were really good at was writing down facts. Now it's called the Codex Regius because it was written by a scribe called Regius, and they write down the facts. We know these characters existed because they're written in the Roman stories. Now the sagas, the much later ones, are translated by Christian scribes, and they're making them into stories and making them interesting. But his symbol, the white dragon, is the symbol of the Germanic people, and in Britain that's the original English flag. The Welsh flag is the red dragon, and that's the Celtic flag, and the Saxon or Norse flag is the white dragon on the red background, and it was represented Sigurd. He slew Fafnir. That's the story, like with the Hobbit. How we see now in England, we have to say St. George. It's just, you know, you have to throw in some sort of Christianity in, but it is Sigurd who we sort of embrace as our character. And all those stories of King Arthur, Ivanhoe. You ever heard of Ivanhoe? Mm-hmm. You know, it's that sort of energy. And Hereward the Wake is a guy I'll talk about one time because he's like my hero in history. But isn't
Ivanhoe too in the Vikings? Isn't that Ragnar Lothbrok's club-footed? Is that Ivanhoe?
That's
character.
Ivor the Boneless.
The Boneless. Thank you. Sorry,
Ivor
I was getting this too. Okay.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting about Ivor the Boneless because he actually existed in history as well, and he was the son of Ragnar Lodbrok, and he actually became one of the greatest Viking kings. They believe now he had spina bifida. His spine was crooked, and he was always carried into battle on a shield. Now, in a time when being a warrior was the most thing about being a king, he must have been a very powerful man to keep hold of the kingdom while not being even able to walk. But once again, because he wasn't physically beautiful and perfect, they sort of wrote him out the stories. Very much like it in the Irish story we talked about the other day, which was Nuada of the Silver Hand. He'd lost a hand, so the Celts decided, oh, he can't be king, he hasn't got a full body. And eventually he becomes king because somebody makes him a silver hand, so they can overlook that. But it's in that time in history to be suffered that much, not be able to walk, to virtually be handicapped, to rise to be a king is incredible. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't have expected him to live much past the age of like 10. And they do portray that a bit in the story of the Vikings that you see. Maybe in the later stories you'll see it, but it all goes on. And he is one of the great leaders of the great army. But you got me on a rant now about sort of history now, so. Anything else?
Well, I know you're passionate about it.
Ivanhoe is a different character. Ivanhoe is a Saxon who rebels against the Normans. And the Normans are from Viking blood as well. The Saxons, the Germanic, the Danes, and actually in Ragnar Lothbrok, it's a real argument of whether he was Norwegian or Danish. In some versions, he's a Dane. And me being English, when you look at the Viking part of Britain, there was a kingdom that was Viking, and it was called the Daneland. And we had to pay Danegeld, which was money so they wouldn't attack us. And we paid it to the Danes, not the Norwegians. So they may have been right. He was Danish. Now, the Norse and the Normans just means they were Northmen. Any other questions?
I have a question about the Teutonic myth and legend.
Yeah.
So there was a part they were talking about the habitation of a witch family on the world's edge with a forest of iron trees.
The iron trees, yeah. I was going to talk about this earlier, like by the time we get to the Poetic Eddas, Gullveig is just seen as a crone. But in the Germanic stories, She's the leader of the witch clan, evil darks. And you can see from this story that J.R. Tolkien was far more influenced by the Saxon stories than the Norse sagas.
Yeah.
The dark elves, the trolls, all that energy is very similar to the Hobbit, and Sutir is Sauron, and and it's all that same energy.
Is there a world that correlates with this experience?
Ironclaw would be somewhere between. Even when I draw the map, because it's a 3-dimensional map, so basically we have the 4 directions and Asgard is at the top, but when we do it as a wheel, we put Niflheim at the top and Muspelheim at the bottom, but actually they're on an axis, they're like that. So Niflheim's in the north and Muspelheim's in the south, but you can't do 2 in the south, so you do it as a 9-pointed thing. The Ironclaw Wood is on the edges, to me, the edges of Frithgarth and Svartalfheim, where our helpers are the dark elves.
Yeah, because it said it was dreaded by both gods and men. So I was wondering if it was Helheim or.
Yeah, and some of it is a struggle to interpret, because these stories are probably from 400 years earlier than the Poetic Eddas, and It's changed. So I teach what's in the Poetic Eddas because it's more defined. There's a lot more darkness in these stories than there is in the Poetic Eddas, and it's good and it's bad. It's a lot more descriptive and describing all the different root races, the trolls, the dark elves, and this stuff. But it seems to labour a lot of time on the torturing of the evil men, which I believe that's an Christian interpretation. Because that's a Christian monk writing down these evil sinners, they will be tortured to the end of time, dragged up, bathed in venom, chopped up, no shoes, walked over spikes. It's like, I'm not sure if that was originally what we thought, or they just go to, yeah, you're done. They wouldn't actually give them that much time. It's only with the Catholic religion, they like persecuting the evil. Oh, you're going to go to hell, you're going to get this. So you have to think, did the Christian monk add a bit of spice of life in himself? As I do. And if you're reading the Teutonic Myths and Legends, as I'm speaking, you'll know that I'm adding some bits in. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's sometimes, unless I add those little bits in, it's completely gobbledygook. And I'm just trying to put a couple of words in it to make it flow. So, because even I lose the drift of what they're sort of droning on about the misery of it all. So I'll put something else in to lead you back into the story. It's called The Spice of Life, I call it, the gift of the schooled.
You do a great job of it.
Okay.
Because I do read while you're telling the story, and I feel like whenever you add in certain things, there's a level of understanding.
I normally do it when I've lost track of it. I think, oh my God. Okay, so I'll bring it back in line. But
you do a great job.
And I do think that the Germanic stories are very interesting to compare the two. You pick the one that makes more sense to you.
Right.
The Germanic stories, for me, I like the way that they see Odin as a man who became a warrior, who became a chieftain, who became a king, who became a sage, who became a god to his people. That makes sense to me. He ascended to be what you call the Godhead, and that's the same as Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, Temujin, Genghis Khan, the king of all men. Same again, a great conqueror who started as a slave to reach to be a great king. In the eyes of his people, he was a god. Yeah, and that doesn't make him any less of a god to me. And it makes him more real because he came of human blood. And Sigurd is a Volsung. The Volsungs are the direct bloodline of Odin. And he's the last of the Volsungs. Whereas the Swedes' royal bloodline, they all come from Lord Frey from Vanaheim. So, and there's lots of Ing names in Sweden, whereas there's lots of Thor names in Norway. Were these originally the Aesir and the Vanir tribes fighting each other on the borders? We don't know. You just have to guess.
Yeah.
So I have a question real quick too, and this question is a small character in the whole story, but the squirrel.
Yeah, Ratatosk.
So tell me again the squirrel's task. He was to deliver messages?
He loves causing strife and gossip. running between the two, the eagle and the falcon of wisdom, down to the need hook. Oh, they're doing this. Back up the top. They said this. They said that. Like this, just to cause strife, to keep the cauldron boiling.
Right.
You know, and
Okay.
and there are always those people that like that, going round and round and round.
Absolutely. Well, I'd mentioned how prevalent squirrel energy is in my world right now. It has been for quite some time.
Well,
So
for
I'm
me,
just-
squirrel energy in Midgard is prepare for hard times ahead. Enjoy yourself, have fun, but put some aside for the winter. What the squirrels do, they'll be laughing, playing, and they're very territorial and very aggressive. But they always store, they prepare, put a bit behind.
Okay.
Any other questions, guys? So I got a chat here. What does that mean? Okay.
Oh, I was just sending Megan a note.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And everybody a note, whoever was in, the young man that's in as well. So are you going to be doing questions at all?
I can do some questions if you want. I've got the runes out.
I
They're
just
ready
thought
to go.
I just thought maybe somebody else was interested. I specifically don't have a question. I'm sure I
Okay.
can come up with one, but
No, you don't. If you haven't got a question, don't come up with one. That's not the way it works.
yeah.
You know, so maybe not meant to be tonight.
I know. I know. I was just saying to encourage, but no, I'm good. I am personally am fine.
Okay, cool. So did you enjoy tonight's class? Well, not class, talk, storytelling.
Yes.
In Britain we call it Jackanory. It's Jackanory time. Which is Cockney rhyming slang for story. Jackanory, story.
I joke and we call it Jeremy. What do we call it? Story time with Jeremy.
There you go.
No, it's always very good and very enlightening for me. I mean, it always triggers something.
Yes.
The more you read them, you always find something in them. I mean, I've actually read that Teutonic story before, but I even found some more stuff and how sort of derogatory the writer was towards Gulveig. Now, and once again, I think, is that a Christian monk derading a witch, a woman who was a wise one, seen as like the healer, the mother, the crone energy? The writer lives in evil iron claw wood with the evil this, evil that. And you just got to be really careful, deduce for yourself how Gulveig appears.
Well, the Teutonics are so much easier to follow than the Poetic Edda. The Poetic Edda is difficult to read and interpret. Yeah. So,
but
they're great.
The best story of Sigurd and Gudrun is written by J.R. Tolkien. He transposed it into rhyming verse, so it just flows. It's a great version. And you can see where he got to the book for his first book, The Silmarillion, about the dragon. Then you see The Hobbit, how they're all related to the same story of the world-chosen king who must kill the dragon. And if you look at The Hobbit with Thorin Oakenshield, who must go and kill the dragon, and he's tempted by the gold, his grandfather's obsessed, turns into the dragon, you can see how it all comes to pass. All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening in, and I'll see you all again on the Voice of Odin.